Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into one of the oldest mysteries ever whispered about by minds both ancient and modern, time itself, not the hours on your clock or the days written on your calendar, but time as it truly might be, an invisible rhythm that may not be flowing at all. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly find these calm explorations enjoyable. And if you'd like, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always strangely comforting to imagine a constellation of listeners scattered across the globe, New York to New Delhi, Tokyo to Toronto, each in their own little pocket of the night, sharing this same quiet curiosity. Now, wherever you are, feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a soft fan for a bit of background hum, and let your breathing slow. We're not racing through ideas tonight. We're going to drift gently, as though floating down a slow river. And if your mind wanders or your eyes grow heavy, that's perfectly fine. Just let the story carry you. Because tonight, we're not only talking about time, we're going to listen for it, to feel how it folds and bends around us, and to wonder if it ever truly moves at all. Imagine you're standing beside a river. The air is cool, and the current glides past with a soft, steady murmur. You drop a leaf into the water and watch as it drifts away, carried by something both simple and profound, the flow of time itself. For as long as humans have been awake beneath the sky, we've watched the sun rise, the shadows stretch, and we've whispered the same question. What exactly is time doing? To our senses, it seems obvious that time moves forward, one heartbeat after another, like a river that never turns back. You wake up, eat breakfast, grow older. You can remember the morning, but not the evening yet to come. There's a rhythm to it, an arrow pointing in one direction. But what if that feeling is an illusion, a kind of story your brain tells to make sense of change? What if past, present, and future are not separate rooms but one vast house, and we're simply walking through it? The idea sounds poetic, almost dreamlike, yet science takes it seriously. Albert Einstein once remarked that for those who understand relativity, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. According to his equations, all events, your birth, the motion of the moon, the final cooling of the stars, could coexist in one grand structure called space-time. It's not so much that time flows, but that we are tracing a particular line through an already existing whole. Still, the feeling of movement is hard to ignore. We sense the passing of moments the way we feel wind on our skin, subtle, continuous, sometimes strong, sometimes barely there. Physicists might say time doesn't truly pass. Psychologists might say that perception is what gives it direction. Perhaps both are right. Maybe what we call the flow of time is really the mind's way of stitching together the universe's quiet stillness into something that feels like motion. To test this idea, let's start small with something familiar. Picture a hot cup of tea. The stem curls upward, the surface ripples, and over a few minutes it cools. You never see the reverse, a cup of cold tea suddenly warming itself. That's not because nature refuses, it's because the universe favours disorder. When energy spreads out, when patterns mix and blur, we call that entropy. It's a fancy word for saying things naturally get messier. The arrow of time, it seems, is drawn by the spread of entropy. Your tea cools because the warmth disperses into the air. It doesn't flow backward because that would require the air's scattered heat to magically gather itself again. And the universe doesn't work that way. Entropy gives us the sense of direction. Forward means toward more mixing, more complexity, more forgetting. But that's not the same as saying time itself is moving. It might only mean that change happens one way. Imagine a photo album. Every picture exists at once, but you flip through in order, page after page. The pages don't move, you do. Perhaps the cosmos is like that, a complete album already bound, while consciousness is the finger turning each page, believing the story is unfolding. There's something humbling in that idea. The world might not be racing forward at all. Instead, we could be travellers gliding along a frozen landscape, our motion merely the sensation of crossing already set terrain. When you think about it, even the light reaching your eyes is a glimpse into the past. The glow of the moon is 1.3 seconds old by the time you see it. The nearest star's light left over 4 years ago. Every sunrise is ancient by the time it touches your window. The present is never truly present. It's a softly delayed echo of what once was. And yet, life feels immediate. You touch a warm mug, you hear a melody, you feel the moment you're in. The trick lies inside your brain. It's always working slightly behind reality. Each sight, sound, and touch takes a fraction of a second to reach your awareness. Your conscious now is really a gentle blending of recent moments, a memory so fresh it pretends to be the present. The brain smooths over the gaps, turning flickers of information into a flowing experience. The river might be in your mind, not in the world. When you stand by an actual river, the water you see at your feet is already moving away. You're always looking at what just was, never what is. That, perhaps, is what time truly is, a continuous vanishing act. And in realizing that, there's no need to feel lost. There's a certain peace in knowing that everything, each breath, each memory, each heartbeat, has its place already etched into the great tapestry. Nothing vanishes. It simply finds its coordinate in the stillness. So tonight, as we begin this journey, think of time not as something rushing past you, but as a vast landscape unfolding around you. You're not being carried away by the current. You're walking through the mist one quiet step at a time through a universe that already contains every sunrise, every heartbeat, and every dream you've ever had. You're simply visiting them in turn, guided by the soft illusion of the present moment. If you close your eyes for a moment, you can almost hear time. Not as a ticking clock or the hum of your phone screen turning off, but as a kind of hush, the sound of things quietly changing, a kettle cooling, the slow settling of dust after footsteps fade. Somewhere in that quiet, time is happening, or at least something we call time. But to truly understand it, we have to learn how to listen differently. Because time, it seems, doesn't like to be caught directly. It's a little like trying to see darkness by turning on a light. The moment you look, it slips away. When you think of time, perhaps you picture a line. Past on the left, future on the right, and you standing somewhere in the middle. It's tidy, comforting, like a roadmap of existence. But that picture is a simplification. In truth, time has many faces, and it changes depending on where, how, and even who you are. A physicist studying collapsing stars might describe it as a dimension stitched into space. A biologist might talk about it as the rhythm of cells dividing, or hearts beating. A psychologist might say it's what the mind invents to make sense of memory and anticipation. 3 different worlds, physical, biological, and psychological, and each paints a slightly different portrait of what we mean by now. So perhaps the first step isn't to define time, but to notice how we experience it. You might have felt hours fly past during a conversation that made you forget yourself, or a minute stretch unbearably while you waited for an answer that never came. Objectively, the clock's hands moved the same, but subjectively, time itself bent. That's the mind's private clock at work, elastic, emotional, always rewriting the story. Science approaches this puzzle through 3 gentle lenses, and tonight we'll use them all. The first is the physical arrow, the one ruled by entropy, where order slips into disorder. It's the arrow that makes ice melt and memories accumulate. The second is the geometric arrow, the one Einstein taught us to imagine. A fabric of space and time woven together, where past and future are simply coordinates in a vast structure. And the third is the psychological arrow, the one your own brain draws moment by moment as it builds the illusion of flow from tiny pulses of perception. Let's start with that first arrow, the one guided by entropy. You can feel it every morning when you make coffee. You pour the hot water, breathe in the aroma, and watch the steam drift upward. If you wait, the heat escapes into the air and the drink cools. Energy spreads. Patterns blur. In physics, there's no need for symbols or equations here. Just the understanding that heat moves from warm to cool, never the reverse, unless something adds energy back in. That's why your tea never reheats itself, and why time seems to march forward. But entropy isn't about destruction, it's about mixing. It's what makes clouds form, galaxies spin, and stars burn out. The universe grows more complex as it spreads its energy thinly, creating both chaos and beauty in the process. The second arrow, Einstein's geometric one, invites us to think differently. Imagine all of existence as a four-dimensional fabric, space and time bound together. We tend to picture space as a place, and time as something that happens in that place. But relativity tells us they are inseparable. Your position in space is linked to your position in time. Move faster, and your clock slows slightly compared to mine. Stand near a massive mountain, and time there passes just a little slower than it does in the open air above. You'll never notice it without delicate instruments, but the effect is real. So real that satellites orbiting Earth must constantly adjust their internal clocks to stay in sync with ours below. Einstein's insight did more than bend the rules, it bent time itself. He showed that there's no single now shared across the universe. What's happening for you, right here, right now, might already be the past, or still the future for someone moving differently, far away. The universe doesn't tick in unison. Instead, it hums like a choir, each voice with its own rhythm, sometimes overlapping, sometimes trailing behind. There's no conductor keeping perfect time. There are only participants, stars, atoms, and people, each carrying their own tempo. The third arrow, the psychological one, lives entirely within your mind. Your brain is constantly gathering bits of sound, light, and touch, and weaving them into a smooth experience. But each sense arrives slightly out of sync. Light travels fast, sound slower, and the brain itself takes time to interpret what it receives. To avoid confusion, it waits just a breath, a tiny delay shorter than a blink, and then combines everything into one continuous moment. In that pause, it stitches the past and the nearly present together so perfectly that you never notice the gap. You live a few fractions of a second behind reality, always chasing the world by the smallest imaginable margin. So when you think you're experiencing the present, you're really watching the past, polished and smoothed by your mind so it feels like now. This idea might sound unsettling, but it's actually comforting. It means that what you call reality is a carefully composed melody, already balanced before it reaches you. There's no need to rush to catch up. You're always exactly where your perception allows you to be. If we listen carefully to these three stories, the physical, the geometric, and the psychological, we begin to sense that time isn't a single, simple thread. It's more like a woven fabric, with strands of physics, mind, and memory crossing and twisting through one another. The flow we feel may just be the movement of our awareness sliding along those threads, one gentle heartbeat at a time. And perhaps that's the secret. Time isn't what flows, we do. Our minds, our hearts, our lives drift across a landscape already there, translating stillness into motion and change into meaning. The universe may not hurry, but we perceive it as if it does. and that's the illusion we call living in the present. So, before we drift further into theories and stories about falling apples, ticking pendulums, and the strange dance of light and gravity, let this thought rest gently with you. Maybe understanding time begins not with measuring seconds, but with learning how to listen to the quiet between them. In that hush, the heart still beats, the kettle still cools, and the river, real or imagined, flows on in the mind, smooth, endless, and beautifully uncertain. Every day, without thinking about it, you live inside one of the strangest and most reliable patterns in the universe. You pour coffee and watch it grow cold. You see sunlight fade into evening. You crumble bread, never to uncrumble it again. Everything seems to drift from order toward disorder, from neat to messy, from hot to cool. This slow, irreversible drift is the quiet heartbeat of reality, and scientists call it the arrow of time. But you don't need equations or laboratory instruments to feel it. You can sense it in the way a snowflake melts, or the way a child grows taller but never smaller, the way your footprints fade from the sand as the tide rolls in. There is no symbol or formula behind this. It's simply the universe's most patient habit, moving from what's tidy to what's mixed. Imagine you're holding a deck of cards. You arrange them neatly by suit and number, a perfect order. Then you shuffle them once, twice, again and again. Each shuffle adds to the chaos, creating countless possible arrangements, each less tidy than the one before. Now technically, nothing in the laws of physics forbids those cards from spontaneously returning to perfect order. But the chance of it happening is so small that you could shuffle for the lifetime of the universe and never see it. The same thing happens with air, water, starlight, even your own body. All of them are constantly spreading energy, mixing, blending, following the one rule that gives direction to time. This rule was first described in the 1800s, when scientists studying steam engines noticed something curious. No matter how perfect their machines were, some heat was always lost. The energy never disappeared, but it spread out, becoming less useful for work. They called this increase in spread entropy. In gentler terms, entropy is the measure of how mixed up things are. When it rises, order fades. It's why hot coffee cools, and why eventually even the brightest stars will burn their fuel and dim into silence. The arrow of time points the way entropy grows. You can almost feel it under your skin. The slow change, the constant soft unravelling of everything once new. But this isn't something to mourn. Entropy is also the reason the world exists at all. Without it, stars wouldn't shine, rivers wouldn't flow, and life wouldn't move forward. Every heartbeat, every breath is the result of energy flowing from high to low, from concentrated to diffuse. We are children of that process, tiny islands of temporary order standing in a sea of increasing mixture. Sometimes it helps to imagine entropy as the storyteller of the cosmos. Its narrative always runs forward, never backward. It remembers everything, but only in one direction. When a glass shatters, it records the sound, the flying fragments, the scattering of energy into the air. You could, in theory, reverse every motion, make the shards leap back and reform the glass. But that reversal would mean unspreading every molecule of air, unmaking every vibration, undoing every tiny change. The story doesn't go that way because there are simply too many pages written forward. Still, deep in the equations of motion, if you were to look at them without interpretation, there is no preference for forward or backward. The rules themselves are symmetrical. You could run them in reverse and they would still make sense. What gives them direction isn't the math, but the boundary conditions, the starting point. The universe began in an extraordinarily ordered state, and it's been unravelling ever since. That initial low entropy spark is what makes time feel like a journey instead of a circle. Without it, all motion might blur into stillness. In daily life, you see the same principle in gentle, familiar ways. The cream swirls into coffee, never the other way around. The colours in your closet fade with sunlight, but the light never gathers them again. You can even sense it in sound, the way a bell's clear note rings out and then decays, each vibration spreading its energy into the air until only silence remains. Entropy is not destruction, it's diffusion. It's the soft spreading of possibility, the reason songs end, clouds disperse and evenings fall. Sometimes we mistake this for loss. We feel nostalgia for the way things were, warm coffee, new paint, fresh mornings. But what we're really feeling is the flow of entropy, the gentle, irreversible march from potential to memory. In that sense, memory itself is a kind of resistance to entropy, a tiny rebellion. When you remember something, you preserve structure, even as the world continues to blur around you. The photograph on your wall, the smell of an old book, the echo of laughter, all of them are moments that entropy has not yet completely softened. There's comfort in realizing that. You're not fighting against time, you're participating in its creation. The flow you feel is not punishment, but process. Every second is the universe redistributing its warmth, rearranging itself into ever new shapes. It's the quiet choreography behind everything you see. If we could somehow look at the universe without our human sense of before and after, we might find that all these changes, the melting, the fading, the aging, simply are. No moment more important than another, no past or future, only an immense, intricate pattern, constantly rearranging. The flow we experience might just be the way our minds read that pattern, scanning from one part to another like eyes moving across a painting. So next time you watch your tea grow cool or your candle shorten, try not to see loss. See the poetry of energy settling into its natural rhythm. See how the universe breathes out softly, everywhere at once. The arrow of time isn't a whip driving us forward. It's the quiet exhalation of everything that has ever been. And in that long, slow breath, the story of the cosmos unfolds, not rushed, not cruel, but endlessly creative. The cooling of coffee, the fall of leaves, the fading of stars, these aren't endings, but gentle translations from one form of order to another. Entropy isn't the enemy of beauty. It's the reason beauty can change. The arrow of time is pointing forward, yes, but not to a destination, to discovery. Every moment you live is another step along that arrow, another new arrangement of the universe that has never existed before. You don't have to chase it or hold on to it. Just notice it. Each second is already doing the work of becoming something new. And somewhere in that slow transformation, from hot to cool, from neat to scattered, from now to memory, you can feel time's most delicate truth. It's not rushing past you. It's unfolding through you, quietly, endlessly, like warmth fading into air. Long before anyone thought to call seconds or minutes by name, people looked up. They watched how shadows shifted through the day, how stars crossed the sky at night, and how seasons returned with quiet reliability. Time, for them, wasn't something measured, it was something felt. The world itself kept the rhythm, sunrise and sunset, planting and harvest, heartbeat and breath. To ancient eyes, time was alive, woven into wind, moon and tide. Picture an Egyptian farmer thousands of years ago, standing by the Nile as the floodwaters rise. To him, time is not a number. It's a promise. The river swells, fields awaken, and he knows the season has turned. When the waters fall again, it's time to plant. The entire calendar is written not in ink, but in the patient handwriting of the river. Every dawn and dusk are the universe's gentle reminders. Another day, another chance to begin again. The Egyptians built the first calendars not to dominate time, but to dance with it. They watched the rising of a single star, Sirius, whose reappearance each year just before sunrise marked the flood's return. They used the sun's shadows as quiet instruments, tracing its arc on temple walls and sand. Each movement became a symbol of order, a rhythm shared between heaven and earth. Other civilizations added their own verses to this rhythm. The Babylonians tracked the moon's phases. The Mayans carved cycles of time into stone. The Greeks built water clocks that dripped at steady rates, each drop a whisper from the future becoming the present. Time was never hidden. It was painted across the sky, flowing through every living thing. But as centuries passed, humanity grew restless. Farmers gave way to merchants, travellers, and sailors who needed something the stars alone couldn't give: consistency. A trader wanted to know not just when to plant, but when his cargo ship would arrive. A builder needed a standard so that a wall in one city aligned perfectly with a pillar in another. Time, once cosmic, began to shrink into human hands, and then came the bells. In medieval towns, church bells became the heartbeat of daily life. They rang not for the stars, but for the schedule: when to wake, when to pray, when to rest. The day was no longer just sunrise and sunset. It was sliced into hours that belonged to everyone. Standing in a narrow street, hearing the bells echo from every direction, you could feel the world begin to move in unison. For the first time, time had become shared. Still, those early clocks were imperfect. Candle clocks burned unevenly, sand clocks faltered in damp air, water clocks froze in winter. People could feel the rhythm of time, but they couldn't yet make it sing in perfect tune. Then, in the 17th century, a Dutch scientist named Christian Huygens found inspiration in something ordinary: a swinging chandelier. He noticed that no matter how far it swung, it took nearly the same amount of time to return. A rhythm that didn't tire, a pendulum in perfect patience. From that observation came the first truly accurate clock. The pendulum transformed time from a cosmic rhythm into a measurable pulse. For the first time in history, seconds became tangible. You could count them. You could own them. The great mechanical hearts of clock towers began to mark the hours with confidence, and humanity followed their beat. The pendulum clock didn't just change technology, it changed perception. Life began to revolve around minutes instead of moods. The factory whistle replaced the sunrise. The world, that once moved with the moon, now moved with gears and cogs, and yet there was still poetry in it. You could stand beneath a great clock tower and feel its steady tick like a heartbeat of the city, a reminder that precision itself had become sacred. In homes and workshops, time was now something you could hold in your pocket. The pocket watch became a small universe, ticking softly as people travelled, traded, and dreamed. It wasn't just a tool, it was a comfort. To carry time was to carry a sense of control, an assurance that you could measure your own existence second by second. But the pendulum also revealed something quietly profound: that time could be standardized, synchronized, and shared across great distances. Trains, for example, needed to run on schedules that connected entire nations. Before standard time zones, every town kept its own local time, set by the sun's position. Noon in one city could be 15 minutes later in another just a few miles away. That might sound trivial, but to engineers coordinating hundreds of trains, it was chaos. So in the 19th century, the world reached a new agreement. The Earth would be divided into 24 time zones. The sun still rose and set as it always had, but human time now followed lines on a map. It's easy to forget how monumental that was. For the first time, humanity wasn't merely observing time, it was sculpting it. Every clock on every wall was a small act of defiance against the randomness of nature. Yet, even in this triumph of precision, something gentle was lost. The stars grew dimmer behind city smoke. The sound of bells was replaced by factory sirens. The heartbeat of nature still played beneath everything, but its tempo was harder to hear. You might say the pendulum clock divided the human soul in two. One part stayed with the sun, the river, and the stars. the timeless rhythms that shaped our ancestors' days. The other part began living by numbers and dials, by seconds that slipped away faster the more we watched them. Time had become a partner and a pursuer, something we could finally measure but never quite satisfy. Even now, with atomic clocks so precise they would lose only a second over millions of years, we still check our phones, still tap our wrists, still ask, "What time is it?" Maybe we're not trying to know the hour. Maybe we're searching for something deeper, the reassurance that time hasn't left us behind. If you listen closely, though, you'll realise that precision doesn't erase mystery. The pendulums swing, the ticking of the second hand, the numbers glowing on your screen, they all trace back to that same ancient rhythm. The movement of the earth, the dance of the stars, the beating of a heart. All the clocks in the world are just reflections of that single, timeless pulse. So when you hear the gentle click of a watch, or the chime of a distant bell, imagine you're hearing an echo, not of machinery, but of the first sunrise. From sun shadows to pendulums, from temple walls to train schedules, every measure of time is still a translation of wonder. We've only made it easier to count. If you could step back into the 17th century, you would find a world trembling on the edge of certainty. The heavens, once ruled by mystery and myth, were being redrawn in ink and reason. Telescopes had revealed moons circling other worlds. Calculations could predict eclipses years in advance. The universe seemed to be speaking a language that could finally be translated, and at the centre of that translation stood Isaac Newton. To Newton, time was not something fragile or flexible. It was the firmest thing there was. In his eyes, time flowed evenly, everywhere, like an invisible ocean that carried every planet and person along at the same steady pace. Nothing could hurry it, nothing could slow it. You could imagine it as an immense stage, endless in every direction, where all of existence performs its scenes. The actors come and go, the props change, the lights fade and rise, but the stage itself never moves. That stage, Newton believed, was time. It's an idea that feels natural. You wake, you eat, you work, you rest. And the rhythm feels constant. Seconds seem to march forward like soldiers, unchanging, reliable. For centuries that was enough. Newton's equations of motion described falling apples, circling planets, and cannonballs with astonishing precision. They told us how to predict, to calculate, to build. And yet, beneath the beauty of that order, a quiet paradox remained. If the laws of motion work equally well backward as forward, what decides the direction of time's flow? Newton's world didn't answer that. His laws were timeless in a literal sense. They described motion, not meaning. A planet's orbit could be reversed, and the same equations would still hold true. There was no preferred direction, no built-in arrow. It was entropy, that slow expansion of disorder that gave time its slope. Without it, Newton's stage would be filled with actors moving, but never aging, repeating their gestures endlessly under a light that never dimmed. Still, for ordinary life, Newton's view worked perfectly. The apple always fell, never rose. Clocks ticked the same in Paris and in London. And perhaps most importantly, the idea that time was absolute gave people a deep sense of confidence. The cosmos wasn't chaos. It was a grand clock, every gear meshing with every other, wound by divine precision. Time itself was the heartbeat of the machine. You can almost hear that certainty in the tick of a pendulum clock. Its rhythm feels eternal, each swing a promise that the world makes sense. A second in your kitchen is the same as a second on the moon. Or so it seemed. Yet even in Newton's age, nature whispered contradictions. Pendulums slowed at higher altitudes, where the pull of the earth was weaker. The tides didn't fit perfectly into tidy schedules. They lagged behind predictions pulled by the moon's complex dance. These were small things, but they hinted that the stage might not be as perfectly level as Newton imagined. Think for a moment about what it means to live in a world of absolute time. Every person, every event, every heartbeat would be part of the same universal rhythm. You could imagine the past and future as pages in a book already written, waiting to be read in order. It's comforting to think the universe runs on such clear rules, like a giant music box wound once and left to play. But there's a quiet sadness in it too, a sense that everything, even your choices, might already be part of a pattern you didn't choose. Still, that vision of the cosmic clock shaped everything that followed. It gave engineers, navigators, and dreamers a framework to measure motion. It built the bridges of modern science, and even the first steps toward understanding light and gravity. Without Newton's stage, the later revolution of relativity would have had no foundation to stand on. If Newton's time was an endless ocean, then Einstein would later show it to be more like a sea with hidden currents, flexible, curved, and alive. But for more than 200 years, Newton's sea seemed calm and perfect. To the scientists who came after him, time felt like a tool they could depend on, not a mystery to unravel. Imagine the world through Newton's eyes. The planets glide like dancers on invisible strings. The moon's pull tugs the ocean as predictably as breathing. A stone dropped from your hand falls because the same law binds it, and the stars above. In this vision, the universe is a masterpiece of balance, and time is its metronome. Even God in Newton's letters seemed to have wound this cosmic clock once, and then stepped back, letting its steady beat play out forever. It's easy to understand the comfort that view brought. After centuries of uncertainty, humanity had found order. The heavens no longer spoke in riddles. They ticked, they turned, they obeyed. In that certainty, people began to believe they could master not just the world, but the future itself, predict the motion of planets, and you could predict the future of weather, tides, even destiny. But deep within that confidence lay a question waiting to wake. If time truly flows evenly, everywhere, what happens when motion itself approaches the limits of light? If all clocks should tick together, why do they sometimes disagree? Those questions would not find their answers until centuries later, when another thinker began to see that Newton's stage was not flat, but curved by something invisible, by gravity and speed themselves. Still, it's worth pausing in Newton's universe for a moment longer. Picture yourself standing under a clear night sky, stars perfectly steady, the air still and cold. Somewhere, you imagine, there's an invisible metronome ticking, uniting every heartbeat and every orbit. It's the kind of vision that can make you feel safe, like being wrapped in a vast, orderly lullaby. The truth that would come later, about bending space, slow clocks, and the relativity of now, will make that lullaby stranger, but also deeper. Newton's time was the first attempt to give the cosmos a pulse that never faltered. Even if we now know it bends and stretches, we still carry that idea within us every time we glance at a watch or whisper, just a second. It's a reminder that long before the age of relativity or quantum paradoxes, time began as a promise of order, a soft ticking in the human imagination. And in that steady beat, the story of curiosity itself began to unfold. It began, as great revolutions often do, with a thought experiment and a question that seemed almost childlike. What would it feel like to ride alongside a beam of light? Einstein was still a young patent clerk in Switzerland when he asked himself that, walking home past ticking clocks and passing trains. The world around him appeared ordinary, but something about those clocks and trains refused to stay simple in his mind. He sensed that time itself was not as steady as people believed, that it might flex and fold the way a river bends around rocks. To understand what he found, imagine a scene on a stormy night. A train races across a dark plain. Lightning strikes both ends of it at the exact same instant. A person standing by the tracks, perfectly still, sees the flashes reach her eyes at the same time. To her, the strikes were simultaneous. But inside the train, a passenger is moving forward, rushing toward the place where the front flash occurred and away from the one at the back. He sees the light from the front flash reach him first. From his view, the two bolts did not strike at the same time. Neither of them is wrong, the universe simply allows both to be true. What's simultaneous for one observer may not be for another. That's the essence of special relativity, the realization that there is no single, universal now. Every moving observer carries their own slice of time, tilted slightly depending on their motion. The faster you move, the more that slice bends. This was a quiet but profound revolution. It meant time was not an absolute river flowing through a fixed landscape. It was part of the landscape itself, connected to space in a single four-dimensional fabric. We call it space-time. When you move through space, you also move through time, trading one for the other the way you might trade distance for altitude when climbing a hill. The faster you go through space, the slower you move through time. It's a trade the universe insists upon. The difference is usually microscopic. At walking speed, your personal time slows by less than a whisper of a second compared to someone standing still. But as your speed approaches that of light, the effect becomes striking. Clocks on fast-moving spacecraft would tick more slowly than those on Earth. To the traveller, everything feels normal. Her heartbeat, her laughter, her breathing all in step. But to us watching from home, her seconds stretch longer. Einstein's insight didn't stop there. He wondered, what if it's not motion but gravity that bends time? He pictured space as a soft, flexible fabric. Place a heavy object like the sun on it, and the fabric dips. Planets move not because they are being pulled by some invisible hand, but because they are following the curved paths that mass creates. General relativity was born from that image, a cosmos where matter tells space how to curve, and space tells matter how to move. And time, gentle and obedient, follows those curves too. A clock near a massive body, deep in a valley of gravity, runs slower than one higher up, where the pull is weaker. That's not metaphor, it's measurable. At mountain observatories, identical clocks tick ever so slightly faster than their twins at sea level. The difference is unimaginably tiny, only a few millionths of a second each day, yet it's enough to make engineers nervous. You rely on that difference every time you use a navigation app. The satellites orbiting above Earth move fast and experience weaker gravity than we do. Both effects conspire to make their onboard clocks tick a little faster than our ground-based ones. If those tiny shifts weren't corrected, if scientists didn't nudge the satellite clocks back into sync, your map would wander miles off course in a single day. Each time you follow directions home, you are quietly relying on Einstein's curved space-time to be accounted for. It's humbling to think of it. The mathematics that once lived only in notebooks now hum invisibly through the devices in our pockets. Time is not absolute, it's elastic, and our technology is proof. But relativity is not just about convenience, it reshapes our sense of reality itself. Imagine standing near a black hole, a place where gravity bends space-time so severely that even light struggles to escape. For someone far away, watching you fall toward the edge, your motions would appear to slow, your clock ticking down to stillness as you hover on the brink. You, however, would feel nothing unusual. Time for you would flow normally, your heartbeat would keep its rhythm. The universe simply disagrees on what now means. This disagreement isn't chaos. It's harmony of a higher kind, like a symphony in which each instrument keeps its own tempo, but together forms a single piece. Space and time adjust their rhythms for everyone, ensuring that the laws of nature remain the same no matter who is listening. That's the true beauty of relativity, not disorder, but balance. Einstein once said that people who truly understand relativity no longer speak of past, present, and future as separate things. They are part of one fabric stitched together by the speed of light. Every event, from a leaf drifting to the ground to a galaxy spinning 1 billion years away, already has its place within this vast curved tapestry. Time doesn't flow. It's the thread itself, and each of us traces one delicate path along it. For most of daily life, you can forget this. You can pour your coffee, check your watch, and trust that seconds behave. But somewhere above you, in the quiet paths of satellites and the bending of starlight, space-time continues its patient dance. Each moment you live is slightly different from every other observer's moment. You're always in your own private now, unique, unrepeatable, curved gently by your motion and your place in the universe. It's a thought that can make you feel very small, but also deeply connected. Every heartbeat, every falling leaf, every orbiting moon shares the same fabric, stretching and curving under the weight of existence. And within that fabric, all the nows of the universe coexist, not competing, not colliding, just harmonizing in their own quiet tempos. So next time you glance at a clock, remember, that little hand is not marking something fixed or universal. It's marking your slice of time, curved just enough by where you stand and how you move. Somewhere, on a mountain or in orbit or near a black hole, another clock is keeping its own rhythm, and both are right. Time isn't a single song, it's a chorus, and every note is true. It's one thing to dream up elegant ideas about bending time. It's another to prove them in the quiet patience of real experiments. Einstein himself never built rockets or carried clocks into the sky. He worked with thought alone, letting imagination serve as his laboratory. But others, years later, decided to test whether time truly does stretch and slow the way he predicted. And to everyone's surprise, the universe nodded. Imagine standing in a clean, silent laboratory at dawn. On one table sits a clock so precise it could count the beats of a second to within 1/1,000,000th of a whisper. On another, an identical twin clock waits, perfectly synchronized. The scientists who watch them treat those glowing digits the way poets treat starlight, with reverence. Because if Einstein is right, these two clocks will eventually disagree, ever so slightly, simply by being placed in different worlds. One of the most famous tests began not in a mountain lab, but aboard a pair of airplanes. In 1971, scientists placed atomic clocks on passenger jets that circled the Earth, one eastward, one westward, while matching clocks stayed behind on the ground. After the planes landed, the researchers compared the times. And there it was. The difference was tiny, measured in a few dozen billionths of a second, but real. The eastward clocks, those flying with the Earth's rotation, had ticked slightly slower than the ones that stayed home. It wasn't science fiction, it was breakfast flight physics. The effect had been predicted by relativity, and now it was visible in the digits of human-made timepieces. Motion itself had stretched time. Other experiments soon followed. Scientists placed clocks at the tops of towers and deep underground, finding that the ones closer to the sky ran faster, while those buried nearer the Earth's core ticked more slowly. Even the difference between the floor and the ceiling of your home, just a few meters apart, translates to a fraction of a second per year. You'll never feel it, but your head quite literally ages a whisper faster than your feet. To make sense of these experiments without equations, think of time as syrup flowing over a landscape. Where gravity is strong, the syrup moves sluggishly, thick and slow. Where gravity thins out, the syrup runs more freely. The Earth's surface is not perfectly even, so the syrup pools differently everywhere. A mountain peak sits in a slightly lighter pool of gravity, so time there drips a bit faster. Down in a valley or in the deep sea, the syrup thickens and the seconds stretch ever so gently. Even our daily world, built on technology, depends on those delicate ripples in time. The satellites above you right now, guiding your location, carry clocks that must constantly adjust for both motion and altitude. If their time ran unchecked, your navigation would drift by several kilometers each day. The engineers have learned to nudge the clocks, a small, quiet correction, like tuning a piano. Without it, the rhythm of your digital life would unravel. And it's not just machines that notice. The signals between cell towers, stock exchanges, and even power grids rely on synchronized timing. If time were truly absolute, none of this would require maintenance. But the universe insists on its elasticity, and so we quietly adjust every hour, every day to keep the symphony in tune. You might think these effects are too small to matter, that seconds so tiny, differences so subtle can't have meaning. But that's the beauty of it. Nature whispers, and we learn to listen. These experiments remind us that reality is not something you only see. It's something you measure, patiently, one flicker at a time. In a way, the story of proving relativity is also a story about humility. It took decades for people to believe that such invisible distortions could exist. Time seemed too sacred, too trustworthy to ever bend. But each experiment was a small act of courage, a way of asking the universe, "Are you sure?" and finding that the answer was yes. If you were to visit one of those mountain laboratories today, you'd find the experiments continuing in ever greater precision. New clocks built from shimmering atoms, cooled almost to absolute stillness, can measure differences so fine they could detect a change in height smaller than the thickness of a piece of paper. Imagine two clocks sitting side by side. Raise one by the width of a notebook, and it will already begin ticking faster than the other. That's how delicate the fabric of time is, so gentle that a simple lift of the hand changes its flow. And yet, for all this complexity, the message is simple. Time is not uniform, but we can predict how it bends. We can trust that if we climb a hill or soar in an airplane or orbit a planet, time will change in precisely the way Einstein described. There's a soft comfort in that predictability. The cosmos may stretch and curve, but it keeps its promises. Think again about those twin clocks. One flown across the world, the other waiting at home. The difference between them when reunited was smaller than the blink of an eye, yet it confirmed something enormous, that each path through the universe comes with its own private rhythm. Your moments, my moments, the moments of every bird, cloud, and satellite are slightly distinct, each following the curves of motion and gravity in its own way. In everyday life, those differences dissolve into harmony. When you walk beside a friend, your clocks are practically in unison. When you stand at sea level or in the mountains, the change is imperceptible. But deep down, every heartbeat, every flicker of thought happens along a thread of space-time unique to you. And because of that, no two people, no two places ever share exactly the same now. There's something almost poetic in that thought. The world looks synchronized, traffic lights blinking, tides rising, but beneath that harmony lies a vast orchestra, each instrument keeping its own subtle tempo. We've learned to live inside that orchestra, adjusting when needed, trusting the melody even when it drifts. So next time your phone pings or your car's GPS calmly tells you to turn left, take a quiet moment to appreciate what's really happening. Tiny clocks, circling high above, are talking to each other through the language of relativity. Each one counts its seconds differently, and yet together they give you a single location, a single moment, a single truth. It's a small miracle of coordination, a reminder that even when the universe bends and stretches, we can find our balance within it. We don't fight time's strange behavior, we learn its rhythm and join in. Even with all our understanding of relativity and the precision of atomic time, the world still finds ways to remind us that perfection doesn't quite belong to it. The Earth, after all, is not a machine. It wobbles and drifts, pulled by tides, winds, melting ice, and even the subtle push of magma flowing beneath the crust. The planet spins like a slightly uneven top, slowing almost imperceptibly over centuries. And because our clocks, those perfect atomic hearts, keep time far more steadily than the Earth itself, every so often, the two must reconcile. The result is one of the quietest, strangest corrections in modern history, the leap second. The idea sounds simple enough. The Earth's rotation gradually loses its pace, taking a little longer to complete one full turn. So, when the difference between atomic time and astronomical time grows large enough, about a single second, the world pauses to add one extra heartbeat to the clock. It's as if the entire planet inhales together and holds its breath for a moment, waiting for the sky to catch up. This hiccup usually happens just before midnight on the last day of June or December. You might not notice it. The digital clock on your wall doesn't blink or stutter. But deep in the data centers and server rooms that quietly run modern life, the leap second is like a small earthquake. In 2012, one such pause sent ripples across the internet. Websites slowed or crashed, servers froze in confusion, and for a few minutes it seemed as though time itself had broken. The machines hadn't been built to handle a second that existed twice. To fix the problem, engineers came up with a gentler solution, a way to smear that extra second across an entire minute. Instead of stopping the clock, they stretch it slightly like pulling soft taffy, letting the time adjust so smoothly that no one and nothing feels the shift. It's a strangely poetic image, humanity learning to stretch time with care, to keep the digital world calm as the planet beneath us takes its uneven breaths. When you think about it, there's something beautiful in that compromise. On one side, we have the atomic clocks, so precise that they would lose less than a second over millions of years. On the other, we have the Earth, swaying and slowing with weather, oceans and storms. And in between stand humans, quietly adjusting, whispering to both sides, "It's all right, we can meet in the middle." Every leap second is a tiny confession that no system is perfect, not even the one that measures perfection itself. It reminds us that we still live under the sky, that our time is tied not only to machines but to the turning of a planet, to the moon's pull on the tides, to the winds and seasons. The clocks may hum with atomic precision, but they still bow to the heartbeat of the Earth. Scientists debate whether we should keep adding leap seconds at all. Each adjustment brings a ripple of complexity through a world that now depends on synchronized precision. Bank transfers, satellite signals, flight paths, digital trading. Some argue that we should let atomic time march on, clean and uninterrupted, even if it drifts away from the sun and stars by a few seconds over centuries. Others insist that human time must stay connected to the sky, that no matter how advanced we become, we shouldn't lose sight of our spinning home. If we stopped correcting, the sun would slowly drift out of sync with the clocks. Noon would come a little later each century. Long after we're gone, the world might one day wake to find the stars slightly misplaced in the schedule of day and night. That idea unsettles some people. Others find it comforting, the notion that even our most perfect systems are anchored to something as natural and imperfect as the Earth's spin. Picture it this way: every atomic clock glowing quietly in a laboratory is like a monk chanting the same note, endlessly, flawlessly. The Earth, meanwhile, hums a different tune, slower, textured, sometimes offbeat. The leap second is the moment when one pauses, listens, and adjusts to the other. It's a reminder that time, even in the age of algorithms, is still a conversation between nature and invention. And maybe that's what makes it human. We could let time run freely, detached from the heavens, but instead we choose to keep our clocks and the cosmos in gentle conversation. We want our seconds to reflect the sky, even if it means occasionally pausing the world for a breath. You can imagine the moment it happens. Somewhere in the quiet heart of a server room, engineers watch the countdown to midnight. Screens glow, digits approach zero, and then, just before the instant arrives, an extra second slips in. For that brief pause, the world is perfectly balanced between two beats, the sun and the clocks, the earth and the machines, all breathing together in unison. And then, time moves on. To most of us, it's invisible. You'll be asleep or laughing or stirring tea, unaware that time just stretched a little to keep the world aligned. But behind that hidden correction lies a powerful truth. Even the most precise systems require softness. The leap second is not a failure of technology, it's a moment of grace. It's our way of saying that time is not an absolute ruler, but a relationship. And perhaps that's the real lesson. In our quest for accuracy, we discover tenderness. We learn that the path to perfect precision runs through understanding, not control. We don't command time, we harmonize with it, nudging it gently back toward balance. If you ever find yourself awake near midnight on one of those rare leap-second nights, you could step outside and look up. The stars will seem perfectly still, the air quiet. Somewhere beneath your feet, the planet turns just a little slower. Somewhere above, the satellites whisper their adjustments, and you, standing there in that invisible pause, will be part of it. The brief, beautiful moment when the world decides to breathe in time with the universe again. Imagine a clock sitting quietly on your desk. Its seconds pass evenly, each tick a calm echo of order. Now picture taking that same clock and carrying it toward the edge of something so massive, so dense, that even light cannot escape. At first it ticks as usual, but as you draw closer, its rhythm begins to slow. To you, holding the clock, everything feels normal. Your pulse matches its beat, your heartbeat is steady. But to anyone watching from far away, the ticks begin to stretch apart, slower and slower, until at last the clock seems to stop altogether. It has not broken. Time itself has. This is the strange and haunting behaviour of a black hole. It is not merely a pit of gravity. It is a distortion of space-time so extreme that the very rules of before and after begin to bend. A black hole can form when a massive star runs out of fuel and collapses under its own weight. All of its matter, once wide as the sun, folds inward until it's crushed into a point so small and dense that it ceases to have a physical surface. Around that invisible heart lies the event horizon, a boundary so absolute that nothing crossing it can return, not even light. To understand what this means for time, think of space-time as a soft sheet stretched under a heavy sphere. When you place a small marble on the sheet, it rolls gently toward the dip the sphere creates. A black hole is like pressing the sphere so hard that it tears a bottomless funnel. The curvature is no longer gentle, it's infinite, and in that curvature, time itself begins to warp. For an observer watching from a safe distance, anything falling toward the horizon appears to move slower and slower, as if caught in syrup. The light from it grows redder, fading like a sunset stretched to eternity. This is called gravitational redshift, not because the colours change in a literal way, but because light waves lose energy as they climb out of gravity's well. To your eyes they stretch, softening from blue to gold to crimson, until the object disappears completely into darkness. But for the traveller falling in, reality feels unchanged. She sees the universe rushing toward her at normal speed. She feels her clock tick normally. To her, time continues as always. Only when she crosses the event horizon does the story end. Not in fire or chaos, but in silence. A one-way crossing beyond which space and time exchange places. She cannot return, not because she's trapped in space, but because she's trapped in a region where forward always means deeper. The direction of time itself has tilted inward. It's a mind-bending truth, but it follows naturally from Einstein's curved space-time. Gravity is not a force pulling things down. It is the bending of time's geometry itself. Near a black hole, that geometry becomes so steep that time for the outside universe races ahead, while the local seconds near the edge stretch thin like film being pulled over light. If you were to hover safely near the horizon, peering outward, you'd see the entire future of the universe unfold faster and faster, as though time elsewhere were accelerating. You could watch stars age and galaxies spin in a flash. But the price for that vantage point would be your own slowing, your clock lagging behind until, to distant eyes, it nearly stopped. Time, it seems, always exacts a trade. Even light, the swift messenger of the cosmos, cannot escape the bargain. When it approaches too closely, the curvature of space-time folds its path back toward the centre. The light doesn't vanish, it simply joins the endless whirlpool of geometry. From outside, we see nothing, only a dark silhouette against the stars, a cosmic shadow cast by the absence of escape. This interplay between perspective and reality, the way two observers can disagree so completely on what's happening, forces us to ask a deeper question. Does time truly flow differently near a black hole, or is flow itself an illusion built from viewpoint? Both answers may be true. Time, after all, is woven from relationships, not absolutes. A second is only meaningful when compared to another second somewhere else. The black hole simply makes that comparison more dramatic, exposing the flexibility that exists everywhere, even here on Earth, though too subtle for us to feel. In the early days of studying black holes, this paradox of freezing from afar puzzled scientists deeply. If everything falling in seems to stop at the horizon, does it ever actually cross? The math says yes, but the observation says no. The resolution, of course, is perspective. Both are correct, each within its own frame. For the falling traveller, the horizon is crossed in a heartbeat. For the distant observer, the heartbeat never finishes. It's a cosmic disagreement that neither can resolve because neither can ever compare notes. That contradiction isn't a flaw, it's a window into how the universe keeps its secrets. It tells us that time is not a single shared current, but a web of intertwined threads, each one stretching differently depending on where and how it's touched. The black hole is just the most vivid loom upon which those threads are visible, and yet, even here, amid all the strangeness, the same quiet logic holds. The math of relativity, if written softly in words rather than symbols, tells us this. Gravity slows time, motion bends it, and extremes can make it appear to stop. But the fabric never truly tears. What we call the end of time may just be a fold too steep for our eyes to follow. The irony is that while a black hole seems like the end of everything, it may also be a beginning of understanding. The way light fades, the way time slows, the way information dances near the edge. All of it suggests that the universe guards its continuity carefully. Even in its darkest places, there is order, pattern, and grace. You could spend a lifetime studying the equations that describe this, but the essence is simple enough to feel. Think of standing by a vast waterfall, hearing the roar and seeing the mist rise. From above, the water seems to pause near the edge, shimmering endlessly before the fall. But if you were in that water, you'd know it never stopped. It only looked that way from a distance. That's what time does near a black hole. It flows freely, but only those within can feel its motion. Perhaps that's why black holes capture our imagination so deeply. They remind us that even time, which seems so solid, is fragile and relative. They are not monsters devouring light, but mirrors showing us the flexibility of reality itself. To watch one is to glimpse how perception, gravity, and time weave the universe together, each defining the other in a quiet, infinite dance. And maybe that's why, when we look into the dark heart of a galaxy and see that shadow surrounded by a ring of fire, we feel awe rather than fear. Because somewhere in that stillness, where time itself slows to silence, the laws of nature are still humming their eternal tune. For most of history, we imagine the universe as a stage, vast, deep, and three-dimensional, filled with stars and matter suspended in space. But modern physics has begun to whisper something more subtle. something that sounds almost impossible at first. Perhaps the true story of reality is written not in the depths, but on the edges. Maybe everything we see, touch, and experience is a kind of projection, like a hologram. A hologram, after all, is a trick of light. A flat sheet of glass, etched with interference patterns, can store the full image of a three-dimensional object. Shine the right light through it, and suddenly, hovering in front of you, appears the object itself, seemingly solid, yet untouchable. Every tiny patch of that glass holds the entire picture in miniature. No single part owns the whole truth, but each contributes a piece of it. It's an idea so elegant that physicists began to wonder, could the universe itself work in a similar way? The clue came, surprisingly, from black holes. When a black hole swallows matter, that matter appears to vanish. Yet the laws of physics insist that information can never truly be lost. If a star, a planet, or a person falls past the event horizon, what happens to the information that once described them? The details of their particles, their positions, their energy? It can't disappear, or the book of the universe would lose a page. But it can't escape either. Then came a remarkable insight. Perhaps the information doesn't vanish inside the hole at all. Perhaps it's stored on the horizon itself. The surface, not the volume. Like writing engraved on the boundary between worlds, the data might remain there, encoded in the fabric of space-time. In that sense, the edge of the black hole isn't a silent curtain. It's more like a cosmic library, keeping careful records of everything that ever crossed it. This realization, known as the holographic principle, grew from a deep and patient meditation on gravity, quantum physics, and information. It suggests that everything happening in three-dimensional space could, in theory, be described by information living on a two-dimensional surface surrounding it. To soften the thought, imagine a room. Inside it are people talking, light bouncing, music playing. Now imagine that every detail, the laughter, the temperature, the particles of dust floating in a sunbeam, could be perfectly encoded on the walls of that room. Nothing is lost. Every whisper and every heartbeat leaves a trace, like the faint shimmer of a fingerprint on glass. If the holographic principle is right, then the universe might be a grand version of that room. The cosmos could be a projection from an unimaginably vast surface, an edge that carries all the information needed to recreate the world inside. The idea doesn't make our lives less real. It simply shifts the question of where reality keeps its notes. Maybe the universe isn't infinite depth, but infinite memory. This vision also gives time itself a new meaning. If information is preserved on the boundaries, then the story of the universe might already exist all at once, written into that cosmic surface. What we call before and after could be the way our minds read that vast record, one page at a time, in sequence. The book is complete, but we are living its story line by line. It's a strangely comforting image, the present moment as a projection of timeless data, like light playing across an ancient film. Even as moments fade, they're never erased. They remain part of the record, woven into the edges of existence. You, me, every sunrise and sigh, each a pattern that still hums softly somewhere in the boundaries of the cosmos. To feel this without numbers or diagrams, picture yourself standing in a quiet room lined with mirrors. Every reflection carries an image of you, but each one is slightly different depending on where you stand. You exist in the center, but the edges hold your story from every possible angle. Now imagine the universe as that room, with every atom, every thought, reflected endlessly at its borders. Those reflections are not illusions. They are the blueprint that makes you real. Even though these ideas rise from complex mathematics, their essence is simple. The universe may be far more connected and communicative than we ever dreamed. Every boundary remembers. Every horizon whispers back to the center. Information doesn't vanish. It just changes address. The more we look, the more the universe seems to guard a quiet continuity, a promise that nothing meaningful is truly lost. When we peer through telescopes and see the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, we're already reading one of those records. That ancient light carries information from nearly 14 billion years ago, a kind of hologram from the universe's earliest edge. Each photon is a messenger, still carrying the memory of a time when everything we know was compressed into a single glowing moment. And in some gentle way, that idea changes what it means to live a single day. If the cosmos itself keeps memory on its boundaries, then perhaps our own lives, our actions, our kindnesses, are never fully gone either. Each gesture might ripple outward, faint but enduring, etched somewhere into the pattern of reality. The holographic principle isn't just physics, it's a reminder that nothing truly slips away. When you watch the stars, their light has travelled for ages to reach you. In that light are records, tiny traces of fusion, gravity and time. You're reading the universe's diary, written in the faintest ink of photons. And somewhere, the light you reflect, the warmth of your presence, the story you live, is joining that same diary, faint but eternal. It's tempting to think of this as mystical, but it's really a form of scientific humility. The edges of reality may know more than its centre. The boundaries remember everything even when we forget. So perhaps when you think of your life, your memories, your fleeting moments of joy and loss, you can take comfort in the possibility that nothing you are or ever were is truly erased. Somewhere in the geometry of existence, the information that was you still hums, folded softly into the fabric of time, like a hologram, fragile, luminous, and enduring. The universe remembers. And in that quiet remembrance, you can almost hear the whisper of the cosmos itself. Nothing is truly gone. Everything still shines, just written on the edges. Imagine holding a crystal in your hand. Within its clear, solid heart, you see veins of colour frozen in intricate shapes. No motion, no flow. Just patterns, each one as permanent as the next. Now imagine that crystal is not a gemstone, but the universe itself. Every event, every heartbeat, sunrise and memory exists inside it, already etched into its structure. Time doesn't run through it like a river. Instead, it is the architecture itself. Past, present and future are all simply different places within the same unchanging whole. This vision is known as the block universe, a way of seeing reality suggested by Einstein's equations. In this view, time is not something that moves forward. It's something we move through. The now you're living is just one slice of that larger structure, like a thin cross-section of light shining through a stained glass window. The past isn't gone, and the future isn't waiting. It's all already there, shimmering in the same eternal crystal. At first, this sounds unsettling. We like to think of the future as open, undecided, waiting for our choices to fill it. But the block universe suggests that everything, from the birth of the first star to the last sigh of the cosmos, already coexists. Nothing truly becomes, it simply is. Your life in this picture is not a story being written, it's a story already complete, one that you experience page by page, moment by moment from within. And yet, that doesn't make your choices meaningless. Within the crystal, you're still the one walking the path. The fact that your journey exists in full doesn't mean you aren't travelling it. The sensation of choice, of change, of surprise, is part of what gives the universe its beauty from the inside. You're both actor and audience, living your role and discovering it at the same time. The block universe removes the idea of a single, universal now. Every observer, every being carries their own slice of reality, tilted slightly by their motion and position. For you, the present moment may include a bird outside your window and the whisper of this narration. For someone else, far away and moving differently, their now might include the sunrise you'll see tomorrow. These differences are not mistakes. They are the natural shape of space-time itself. There's no master clock synchronizing them all. Instead, the universe is a mosaic of countless overlapping moments, each one valid in its own quiet way. To understand this, imagine a loaf of bread, freshly baked. Each slice represents a different now from someone's point of view. One slice might contain your current breath, another your childhood, another your yet unlived tomorrow. The loaf doesn't move, it simply exists, whole and complete. When you experience time, you're just travelling from one slice to the next, savouring them in sequence. From outside, nothing changes. From inside, everything does. The Italian physicist Carlo Rovelli once described time as relational rather than absolute. Time, he says, is not a universal drumbeat keeping rhythm for everyone. It's the dance between things. When two dancers move together, each step defines the other. Time exists not because there's an external clock counting, but because change happens in relation to something else. Without those relationships, without the dancers, there is no rhythm at all. So, instead of picturing time as a ruler stretched across the universe, imagine it as the quiet music of interaction. When a leaf falls, when a planet spins, when you exhale, that's time. Not because a cosmic metronome told it to happen, but because one thing moved relative to another. In that sense, time is not the stage, but the choreography, the delicate balance between all that exists. If we follow this thought gently, we find that even within the block universe, this great frozen crystal, there's still harmony. The illusion of flow comes from our motion within the structure, the way we trace a thread of awareness through fixed events. The relationship between those events, the pattern, the connections, is what we feel as time. Without those relationships, the universe would be silent, static, unfeeling. But with them, it sings. It's easy to wonder, if everything already exists, what happens to free will? If my future is already written in the crystal, am I truly choosing it? Maybe the better question is whether being the character in the story is any less real than writing the story itself. The book exists, yes, but you are still the one turning the pages. You still laugh, cry, hesitate, and decide. Those emotions are not fake simply because the pages are already bound. They are what bring the story to life from within. In the same way, the block universe doesn't cancel freedom, it simply reframes it. You are both part of the structure and its interpreter. From the outside, your life may be one complete line of space-time, but from the inside, it's an unfolding melody, each note arriving as if new. What gives meaning to time is not whether it flows, but how we experience its rhythm. Meaning lives in the act of reading, not in the completeness of the book. So when you feel time slipping away, remember, it may not be slipping at all. Every moment you've lived still exists, embedded forever in the crystal. The laughter, the mistakes, the quiet walks, they haven't vanished. They are part of the fabric, forever preserved in the geometry of space-time. You may no longer touch them, but they are still there, glowing faintly like stars in distant corners of the universe. And perhaps that's what eternity truly is. Not endless duration, but perfect completeness. The block universe doesn't stretch time, it holds it, whole and still, like a snow globe where every flake is frozen mid-fall. Inside that globe we move, breathe, and change. We see the flakes swirl, though none of them really shift. The illusion of movement is our gift, the way our minds read the static beauty of everything that has ever been and ever will be. Some find that idea cold, but if you look closer, it can be deeply comforting. In a universe where all moments coexist, nothing precious is ever truly lost. Every embrace, every kindness, every breath has its forever place, shimmering quietly in the grand design. And even if time doesn't flow, meaning does. because meaning is the light shining through the crystal, and you are the prism through which it passes. Imagine walking through a vast and silent museum. The air is still, the lights dim, and the corridors stretch endlessly into shadow. Along the walls hang thousands of paintings, not of landscapes or faces, but of entire moments. In one, a candle burns low beside a forgotten book. In another, a city stirs to life under the glow of morning. And in the next, a child laughs, frozen mid-motion, a tiny universe contained in her joy. Each canvas is complete and self-contained. None is moving, and yet, as you walk from one to the next, you can feel a story unfolding. This is how physicist Julian Barbour imagines reality itself. In his timeless vision, which he calls Platonia, the universe is not a flowing river of moments, but a gallery of nows. Each now is a configuration of the entire cosmos, every atom, every breath, every cloud in the sky, arranged in one unique pattern. These nows don't follow one another, they simply are. The sense of motion we feel, the way we remember the past and anticipate the future, comes from how some of these nows carry faint imprints of others, like footprints in snow. You can think of it as an infinite collection of photographs laid out across eternity. None of them is more real than the others. We experience one after another not because they move, but because consciousness gives them sequence. The mind steps through them like a traveller wandering from frame to frame, reading the record of the universe in order. Barbour's idea is both haunting and gentle. In his view, time itself doesn't exist. Only change does. The universe doesn't evolve. It is a collection of possible arrangements, and our awareness is the thread stitching a path through them. Imagine shuffling a deck of cards that contains every possible combination of the cosmos. We find ourselves within one particular hand, then the next, not because time pushes us forward, but because our memory makes sense of difference. It's tempting to think this means nothing really happens, but that's not quite right. Change still exists. It's simply reinterpreted. What we call flow is the brain connecting these nows, weaving them into continuity. Each now is static, but together they form a tapestry that feels alive. You can picture it as a movie reel. The frames themselves don't move, yet when light passes through them, the illusion of motion appears. The light in this case is consciousness. Barbour also speaks of a records hypothesis, the idea that within each now, traces of previous nows exist. Your memory, the worn pages of a diary, the rings of a tree, all are records embedded in a single frame, giving the impression of a past. You believe you remember yesterday because this current now contains the memory of it. Yesterday still exists elsewhere in Platonia, preserved in its own stillness, but you can no longer reach it. All you hold is the echo that today carries. If that sounds abstract, think of walking through the museum again. You stand before a painting that shows a woman gazing at a field of wheat. In the next painting, she's holding a loaf of bread. There's no motion between the two, but you, the observer, supply the connection. Your mind fills in the act of harvesting, kneading, baking, the missing flow between still frames. The paintings don't move, but your awareness dances between them. That dance is what we call time. In this way, Platonia gives a new meaning to the arrow of time. The arrow isn't an external push guiding everything forward. It's the direction in which complexity grows across the gallery. In some paintings, the patterns are simple. In others, they're intricate and layered. As we move from less complex nows to more complex ones, we experience that as forward. Entropy, the measure of how mixed or disordered things are, might simply be the label for this rising intricacy. The arrow of time, then, could be the mind's compass pointing toward frames of increasing detail. There's a quiet poetry to this. It means that even if time doesn't truly pass, meaning still does. The path your awareness takes through Platonia is yours alone. Each step, each moment of recognition, each heartbeat is a chosen corridor in that infinite museum. Somewhere behind you, The earlier galleries remain, dustless, eternal. Ahead, endless others wait, already painted but unseen. You cannot visit them out of order, but they are there, waiting in the stillness. It's easy to see why Barbour's view feels both strange and comforting. If everything exists simultaneously, then nothing is ever truly lost. The laughter of your childhood, the first night sky you ever noticed, the voice of someone you miss, they are all preserved, still hanging in their respective halls. You move on, but they remain. Time doesn't carry them away, it only carries you. And perhaps that is what memory really is. Not the past reaching forward, but the present reaching back. Each recollection is the mind brushing against another frame in the gallery, recognizing a familiar arrangement of light and feeling. The more we remember, the more vividly we travel through Platonia, revisiting its quiet corridors. If this feels hard to imagine, try closing your eyes. Notice how moments appear not as a line, but as a field. Fragments of sound, breath, and thought existing together. When you recall something, you don't rewind, you re-enter. You're stepping sideways in Platonia, touching another now. The same may happen when you dream. The mind wandering freely among frames, unbound by the order that daylight enforces. Barbour's timeless vision might seem to erase the urgency of life, but it can also deepen its tenderness. If every now is equally real, then each moment you experience is infinite in its own right. When you pause to watch snow falling or share quiet laughter with a friend, that now doesn't dissolve. It takes its place among the countless others, permanent as a star in a dark gallery. And so, we return to ourselves, not as travellers on a timeline, but as curators of experience. We move through the museum of nows, collecting meanings, noticing beauty, leaving small traces for future visitors in the form of memories, words, or kindnesses. When you leave this gallery, this now, and step into the next, it won't be because time pushed you. It will be because the path of awareness continues its gentle walk, finding its way through an infinite collection of stillness. In that way, Platonia is less a theory of physics and more a hymn to perception. It tells us that the universe doesn't vanish, it waits. And we, drifting through its silent halls, are the light that makes it visible. If the universe is a gallery of still moments, then your mind is the quiet visitor walking through it, one frame at a time, yet always feeling a flow. But what creates that flow? Why does life seem to move, when every scientific clue tells us it might not? The answer, softly and astonishingly, lies not in the stars or equations, but in your own brain. Imagine standing by a window that only opens for the briefest moment. You can't see the entire landscape, but you catch enough of it to feel continuity, a bird in mid-flight, a leaf tumbling through the air. Your mind doesn't capture a single instant. It captures a tiny stretch of them and stitches them into one experience. That stretch is called the specious present, the short, seamless window that your brain slides open to let reality in. You might think you live in the exact now, but neuroscience shows otherwise. There's always a gentle delay between the world and your awareness of it. Less than the blink of an eye, shorter than a heartbeat, just enough for your mind to gather sights, sounds, and sensations and weave them together. If perception happened instantly, your life would be a jumble of disconnected flashes. Instead, the brain buffers them, creating a moment that's long enough to feel real, yet short enough to feel alive. Think of it like a film reel. Each frame by itself is still, but when projected at the right speed, the light between frames fills the gaps. The flicker disappears and the movie flows. Your consciousness does the same trick, smoothing over the gaps between sensory inputs. A car passing, a person speaking, rain tapping against glass, all become continuous because your mind quietly edits the world before you notice. This window of the present isn't the same for everyone or everything. Some animals experience faster rhythms, their senses tuned to quicker beats. To a fly, your slow wave of a hand might appear as a long, graceful drift, because its brain refreshes the world more rapidly. For you, the same gesture feels instant. The difference isn't in time itself, it's in how each creature samples it. Every brain has its own tempo, its own aperture through which the universe appears. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of the editing process. Have you ever looked at a clock and felt that the second hand paused for a heartbeat before moving again? That illusion, the stopped clock feeling, happens because when your eyes jump to a new spot, your brain fills in the missing milliseconds by stretching the first image to cover the gap. You never see the skip. The brain paints over it with smoothness. It's like a conductor ensuring that the orchestra never falls silent, even when the musicians breathe. Another illusion, the flash lag effect, reveals the same pattern. When a moving light and a sudden flash occur together, you tend to perceive the moving light as slightly ahead, even though they were simultaneous. Your mind predicts motion, blending what just happened with what's about to happen. It's not deception, it's efficiency. Your brain lives half a step into the future, always anticipating, always smoothing the world into coherence. These tiny tricks are not flaws, they are the reason experience feels whole. If perception were truly instant, you'd live in chaos, a flurry of disjointed sensations without rhythm. Instead, the mind creates harmony by letting each now overlap slightly with the next, like overlapping brushstrokes in a painting. That overlap gives reality its softness, its sense of motion. The brain isn't lying to you, it's composing. Even emotions can stretch or compress the sense of time. Fear makes seconds expand. You might remember a fall or a close call as lasting longer than it really did. That's because under stress, the brain records more detail, creating denser memories. Looking back, those memories take longer to replay, so the event feels extended. Conversely, when you're absorbed in joy or creativity, hours dissolve. Your brain stops marking time, letting experience flow without measure. It's not that time speeds or slows outside, it's that your inner metronome adjusts its tempo to match your attention. Dreams carry this to their most graceful extreme. You can live a whole adventure in a dream, journeys, conversations, years, and wake to find that only a few minutes have passed. The mind, free from the demands of the waking world, folds and unfolds time as it pleases. It's as if, while you sleep, you're moving through Platonia in a different way, skipping between its frames without needing sequence. In waking life, that flexibility is always there, quietly hidden beneath your awareness. Every now you experience is a symphony of overlapping notes, a few from the recent past, a few from the immediate present, and a faint echo of what you expect next. Your mind doesn't distinguish them sharply, it blends them into one shimmering moment. That's why you can listen to a melody instead of hearing a series of disconnected notes. Without this smoothing, music would dissolve into noise, motion into blur, life into static. If the universe itself is timeless, then consciousness may be the painter that gives it motion. The brain's integration of milliseconds is a miniature version of the cosmic illusion, a small, human echo of the block universe's eternal stillness. Where physics sees frozen frames, the mind sees motion. Where the cosmos holds completeness, we feel unfolding. In that sense, you're both participant and creator. Time doesn't flow around you, you're the one who makes it flow. And yet, even knowing this, the discovery feels gentle rather than disorienting, because it means your perception, your rhythm, your now, is a living thing, crafted uniquely by your brain, your emotions, your heartbeat. You're not trapped in a rigid clockwork universe. You're composing a melody of moments that no one else can experience the same way. Think about it as you breathe. Each inhale, each exhale, its own overlapping present. The air that enters your lungs existed long before this moment. The air that leaves will drift through countless futures. Yet, for this brief heartbeat, it belongs to you. That's the miracle of the specious present, an unbroken illusion so perfect that it becomes truth. So, when you next look out a window or listen to rain, remember that the world you're hearing and seeing has already happened by the time you notice it. You're living a few fractions of a blink behind reality, and that's all right. The delay is the reason you can see continuity instead of chaos. The reason life feels like a story instead of scattered sparks. The reason time, though built from stillness, feels like motion. Your now is not a point. It's a window your mind slides open, wide enough to let the universe pour through, smooth enough to make it sing. If you pause for a moment and think about what it feels like to decide, really decide, you might picture a spark, an instant when willpower steps forward and the body obeys. You lift your hand, you take a breath, you begin. It seems so simple, as if your mind gives the command and your body follows. But science, with its quiet instruments and patient observations, reveals something stranger and softer. That spark of decision begins before you're even aware of it. In the 1980s, neuroscientists placed gentle electrodes on people's heads while they performed small tasks, pressing a button, moving a finger, flexing a wrist. Each time they found a faint wave of preparation in the brain, starting several hundred milliseconds before the person felt the urge to move. The body was already getting ready, winding up for action before consciousness joined the conversation. It's often called the readiness potential, but let's describe it differently. Think of it as a soft inhale before a song begins, a quiet intake of breath before the first note is sung. At first, this discovery seemed unsettling. If the brain starts before you decide, are you really in control? Are we passengers watching decisions unfold after they're already made? It's tempting to imagine a loss of freedom there, but the truth is subtler and gentler. Conscious will isn't a commander shouting orders. It's more like a conductor guiding an orchestra already playing. Your brain, body, and emotions are constantly improvising beneath awareness, and your conscious self joins in, adding harmony, emphasis, direction. You're not absent from the process. You're part of the symphony. Choice, in this sense, isn't a single flash in time. It's a gradual rising of intention. You might feel it when you stand at a crosswalk, debating whether to run through the yellow light or wait. The muscles in your legs are already coiled, tiny neurons whispering possibilities. The moment you move feels sudden, but it's really the crest of a wave that's been building quietly in the background. Free will doesn't vanish because of that. It becomes something deeper, more layered. Think of it as a dance between different kinds of time within you. There's Kronos, the Greek personification of measured time, the ticking of seconds, the mechanical rhythm of clocks and schedules. Kronos is the time that keeps trains on schedule, deadlines met, appointments made. It's the world's tempo, predictable and external. But there's another kind of time, Tempus, or as some poets call it, Kairos, the time of meaning, of moments that feel full and alive. This is the time of presence, the breath between notes, the slow unfolding of feeling. Tempus has no clock hands. It stretches and contracts with emotion, with connection, with attention. Every human life is a balancing act between these two kinds of time. Kronos gives us structure, but Tempus gives us depth. The first keeps us moving, the second makes the motion worthwhile. When you wash a dish or tie your shoes or sip your morning coffee, you might feel Kronos ticking softly in the background. But when you lose yourself in laughter, in art, in conversation, Kronos fades and Tempus opens wide, letting you step out of the flow and into the moment. This is what people mean when they talk about being in the zone or in flow. This sense of self dissolves, and action happens almost by itself. A pianist's fingers move without conscious thought. A runner feels their body gliding as if time itself were running beside them. It's not that thinking stops, it's that thought and motion merge. The conscious and unconscious are no longer out of sync, they're dancing. The readiness potential and the feeling of decision become the same gesture. You're not watching yourself act, you are the action. It's no coincidence that this state feels peaceful. When awareness and intention move together, the small internal friction that defines daily life disappears. You're no longer calculating time, only living it. Neuroscientists sometimes describe this as transient hypofrontality, but we don't need such heavy words. We can call it what it feels like, the deep ease of being fully present. In moments like these, time seems to slow, not because the seconds change, but because you stop counting them. You shift from Kronos to Tempus, from external rhythm to internal melody. That's why a conversation with someone you love can stretch for hours that feel like minutes, while a moment of anxiety can make a minute feel endless. You can't measure these differences with a stopwatch. They belong to the inner architecture of time. Understanding this can change the way you experience your own days. When you notice stress, hurry, or impatience creeping in, it helps to realize that you're simply trapped in Kronos, caught in measured time, chasing hands on a clock. But you can step out of it. You can breathe, slow down, let Tempus unfold. Pour tea carefully, listen to rain, watch how light moves across a wall. These small acts aren't meaningless. They're how we reconnect with time as experience, not measurement. In truth, both kinds of time are necessary. Kronos helps you catch the train, cook dinner, pay bills. Tempus helps you remember why any of it matters. Kronos structures life. Tempus gives it soul. The trick is not to choose one or the other, but to let them alternate, like two tides washing over each other, balancing motion and rest. Even the simplest routines can become gentle rituals when you move through them with awareness. A slow walk without your phone, a conversation where silence feels comfortable, folding a shirt not out of duty, but as a small act of order in the universe. Each of these moments, however ordinary, is a way of living in both kinds of time, of hearing the metronome of Kronos and the melody of Tempus playing together. The readiness signals in your brain, the flow of your actions, the feeling of choosing. These are all proof that your life isn't a rigid chain of causes, but a living rhythm. You're not the victim of time's current. You are its musician. You guide it, respond to it, improvise within it. And in doing so, you find the freedom that no formula or experiment could ever erase. Perhaps that's what choice really is. Not the ability to rewrite the universe, but the ability to move gracefully within it, to act with awareness, to find harmony in the given melody. And when you do, when you find that alignment between your mind's quiet preparation and your conscious will, you enter the closest thing we have to timelessness. Not the absence of time, but its perfect flow. So tonight, if you feel rushed or restless, try slowing down just enough to notice how your mind prepares each gesture before you do it, how your breath rises before you speak, how your fingers hover before they type. All of it is one continuous movement, soft and ancient. The readiness potential isn't a sign that you lack control, it's evidence that you are part of a grander rhythm, one that includes neurons and thoughts, gravity and galaxies, all playing together. You don't have to command time, you only have to join it. And when you do, you'll discover that the world has always been waiting at your tempo. So here we are, near the quiet end of the road, surrounded by the echoes of all that time might be, or might not be. We've wandered from entropy to clocks, from black holes to neurons, and perhaps by now it feels like everything solid has gently melted into mystery. Time stretches, folds, freezes, and yet life goes on. The kettle still sings, the cat still yawns, the morning light still creeps softly through the curtains, If time doesn't flow the way we think it does, what are we to make of these ordinary moments? What still matters when the river turns out to be a still lake and the motion was always our own reflection? The answer, perhaps, is found in the smallest of things. Even if time is an illusion, change is not. We can still tidy a room, mend a shirt, water a plant. Entropy might be the quiet rule of the universe, the tendency of things to drift toward disorder, but we are living proof that local order is still possible. Every act of care is a small defiance of chaos. You don't need to stop the spread of disorder to give meaning to life. You just need to create brief pockets of harmony within it. Think of your home on a Sunday morning. Dishes washed, a candle lit, fresh sheets folded. None of it will last. Dust will return, clothes will wrinkle, the candle will burn down. But for that gentle moment, you've carved out a space where the world feels right. That's stewardship, the art of balancing against entropy, not conquering it. It's the same quiet force that keeps stars burning and cells repairing themselves, the same rhythm that holds a heartbeat steady. You might say this is what it means to live well in a timeless universe, to tend to the small details, knowing they are transient but meaningful, to sweep the floor not because it will stay clean forever, but because the act itself is a declaration of presence. In doing so, you shape a corner of the world and yourself into brief alignment. It's not about defeating time, but harmonizing with it. Our ancestors sensed this long before physics gave it language. They built rituals around the passing of the sun, not to control time, but to honor it. Lighting a candle, saying a prayer, marking a birthday, all these small ceremonies are ways of saying, I am here, in this moment, aware of its fragility. Even when we know the future and past coexist in a cosmic crystal, we still choose to celebrate the now. Because meaning doesn't come from the structure of time, it comes from how we live inside it. In this sense, your days are like brushstrokes on a canvas that already exists. You may not be painting the whole picture from scratch, but each stroke brings out a hue, a contrast, a warmth that wasn't visible before. The universe might not need you to add colour, but you do it anyway, and in doing so the painting becomes richer. That's not illusion, that's participation. Even the most mundane tasks become soft miracles when seen in this light. Making tea, answering a message, tending to a child, folding the same shirt you'll unfold tomorrow. Each action leaves a trace in the geometry of existence. You're maintaining local order in a vast entropic sea. You are, in your own way, keeping the song of life in tune. Physics tells us that all moments exist already, but existence and awareness are not the same thing. Meaning happens in awareness, in the way we choose to witness and respond. You can look at the same rainstorm and see inconvenience or grace. The event is the same in the block universe. What changes is the lens. Even in a cosmos where everything is written, interpretation remains ours. Perhaps that's why kindness feels timeless. When you do something gentle, a comforting word, a shared meal, a small forgiveness, you're creating a kind of local reversal of entropy. You bring order and calm where there was noise and confusion. These acts ripple quietly through Platonia's gallery, linking one frame to another through the memory of care. Maybe the physics of time doesn't change, but the emotional geometry does. The universe bends slightly toward connection, and that is enough. Think, too, of rhythm. Life has its cycles, waking and sleeping, work and rest, growth and decay. Even if time is not truly flowing, we feel its pulse through these repetitions. The earth spins, the moon rises, our hearts keep time with both. To live well is to learn the beat of these rhythms and move with them rather than against them. Sleep when the world dims, pause between efforts, let silence return after noise. It's not laziness, it's alignment. You might call this soft physics, the kind that governs hearts as much as atoms. It's the gentle science of existing gracefully within systems that change. Where entropy insists everything falls apart, soft physics suggests that falling apart can be beautiful if we learn to fall together. There's comfort in that perspective. If the universe is indifferent, it is at least consistent. It gives you the freedom to find meaning wherever you wish. You don't need to know whether time is real or illusory to feel wonder at a sunrise, or gratitude for a shared laugh. You just need to be present enough to notice. Awareness is its own kind of timekeeping, one that requires no clock. So maybe that's what matters most. Not how long we have, but how open we are. Whether we experience time as a flowing stream or a stillness beneath our feet, we can still live kindly, attentively, and curiously. We can still make the bed, write the letter, plant the seed. We can still love, knowing that even love itself might be a timeless arrangement in the crystal of existence. And if all of this, the galaxies, the atoms, the quiet ticking of our hearts, is already written, then perhaps our role is to read it well, to linger over the sentences, to savour the punctuation, to breathe between the lines. Because whether or not time flows, experience does. And the act of experiencing, the noticing, the caring, the choosing, is where meaning hides. So as you move through the hours ahead, think less about how much time is left, and more about how gently you can fill it. You are the steward of your own corner of the cosmos, the keeper of a small but significant order amid infinite possibility. Your hands, your thoughts, your kindness, they're all tools of balance. Time may be an illusion, but wonder is not. It's real each time you stop to see the world as it is, fragile, fleeting, already eternal. And so we arrive where we began, beside the quiet river that may or may not be moving. After all this wandering through physics and thought, it's comforting to return here, to something so familiar. The night air feels still, the water glimmers under the soft light of the moon, and in the faint ripples you can almost hear the story of everything we've learned. Not as lessons, but as echoes, slow, continuous, timeless. If you listen closely, you can hear them, the gentle themes that have followed us, the arrow of entropy, guiding coffee to cool and stars to fade, the steady tick of Newton's perfect clock, and the sudden revelation that time itself bends under the weight of speed and gravity, the engineers adding leap seconds, the black holes that slow eternity to a whisper, the holographic walls that might remember everything that has ever happened. The galleries of frozen nows, the brain's quiet window of perception, the dance of choice and readiness, the rhythm of care that gives our fleeting lives a pulse. Each idea has passed like a wave, merging softly into the next, and now they all meet here, in stillness. You can think of your mind as that river, reflecting, rippling, never quite holding the same shape. For a moment you feel time as a current, pulling everything onward. But then, as the surface settles, you see what perhaps Einstein and Barbour saw in their own ways, that nothing is truly leaving, nothing is vanishing downstream. The reflections are changing, yes, but the water, the fabric beneath, is always here. Time, if we can call it that, may not be a flow at all, but a kind of landscape, vast and layered. You're not standing in the current, you're walking through the terrain. The hills are moments you've climbed, the valleys are the quiet places you've rested in, and the far horizon is what you call your future. Though it's already written in the folds of the land, you move not because the world is pulling you forward, but because you're exploring what already exists. When you look back, you may realize that the most important discoveries were not about clocks or equations, they were about perspective. The universe may not share our idea of time, but it still allows us to live within it, to love and lose, to dream and remember. Every scientific truth we've touched tonight, entropy, relativity, perception, turns out to be less about the destruction of meaning and more about its expansion. Time doesn't need to flow for beauty to exist. Beauty simply is, written into the fabric of existence like light into glass. The arrow of entropy taught us that even as order unravels, creation happens within the unraveling. Each fading moment gives birth to something new, a spark of understanding, a pattern, a breath. Relativity showed us that there is no single now, and yet every now feels completely real. Barbour and Rovelli reminded us that relationships, not absolutes, define reality, that the cosmos is not a ticking machine, but a dance of comparisons. The brain revealed that perception isn't passive, it paints the motion we call life, and at the heart of it all, the human spirit insists on finding tenderness amid transience, choosing to sweep the floor, pour the tea, and look at the stars even when time itself refuses to behave. As you stand by the river, you might wonder, if everything is already written, what is the purpose of living it? The answer may be softer than you expect. You live it because it's yours to experience from within. The meaning of a story isn't in the ink, it's in the reading. If the universe is a crystal of eternal moments, then you are the light passing through it, making it glow. You give motion to what is still, warmth to what is infinite, song to what would otherwise be silence. Perhaps the greatest kindness of all is that you don't need to solve time, you only need to live in it, to wake and sleep, to love and lose, to wonder and to rest. You are part of the same pattern as stars collapsing and flowers opening, the same symmetry, the same patience. Whether or not time flows, existence certainly does, and so, in this final moment of stillness, take a slow breath. Feel how the air moves in and out of you, how something invisible can shape something real. Notice how the world continues its quiet work. The hum of distant insects, the murmur of wind in the trees, the hush of everything returning to balance. You're not outside of time watching it happen. You're within it, inseparable from the rhythm itself. Somewhere, far away, clocks continue their ticking. Satellites correct themselves by millionths of a second. Stars measure their own decay in the light they send across galaxies. But here, by this river, none of that matters. Here, time is not measured, it is felt. The seconds dissolve into sensations, cool air, soft light, the faint weight of your own heartbeat. The universe holds still, and you are perfectly aligned with it. If you were to describe this moment mathematically, the numbers would vanish. What remains is the feeling, the awareness of being. Maybe that's what time truly is. Consciousness meeting change, awareness catching its own reflection. Every now is a quiet handshake between the eternal and the immediate. Look again at the river. Its surface trembles, reflecting the moon in thousands of pieces. Each shimmer is a different now, a different possibility, yet they all belong to one still body of water. That's what you are, a collection of reflections, each one a facet of a larger stillness. Whether or not you believe in fate or freedom, flow or stillness, one truth endures. You are here, and the universe is here with you. So, as the night deepens and your eyes grow heavy, let the river carry this final thought to you. Nothing is truly lost. Every moment you've lived, every kindness you've given, every breath you've taken still exists, folded gently into the timelessness of everything. The future is not waiting ahead, it is resting all around you, and you, small and infinite all at once, are already part of it. When you're ready, you can let go of thought and let the quiet do the speaking. The stars will keep their vigil, the earth will keep its slow turn, and the river will keep its silent reflection. Whether time flows or stands still, no longer matters. You are within it either way, safe, certain, and at rest. And so, we've reached the end of this long, gentle journey. Or perhaps not an end at all, but another frame in the gallery, another shimmer on the water. The night is still, the story complete. If your eyes are closing, let them. If your thoughts drift, let them. The universe isn't in a hurry. It never was. Sleep peacefully wherever and whenever you may be.